Hi everyone. Yeah, so obviously it's probably not your standard way these things are presented, but I wanted to give you a bit of a rundown of some live code, and I figured I'd give you the source code as well, so you can have a play around with it at the end if you want to go back over it. But first of all, so we're going to have a chat about Mongoose, which is a Node.js library to help simplify operations with MongoDB. So first of all, just so I can get a bit of a read of the room, who uses Node.js backend stuff? Cool, all right. Who's used the entity framework from .NET? Okay, this is probably going to be pretty new to you guys then. Okay, so first of all, when you're dealing with a typical database, rather than especially a SQL database, say, and you get up and you chuck in your SQL code and you get back effectively an array of data. What Mongoose does and what the entity framework does, so it's very similar to that. Basically what it does is it grabs your array of bits of code and then it turns it into objects that you can do things with. So instead of having to write a query or another query then to update an object, has that done? Yep. Yep. Instead of having to write another query to what? No, now it's screwed. It's all over. To update the object. You can just call on the object, you can just go .save. Okay, so it's going to run the resolution again?
Yeah, it's
going to be good.
It's going to be fun. Please do fun.
It's going to be fun.
Wait for it. Come on.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so basically what you can do is you can grab an object and you can click save. But I want to, instead of really trying to get to explain it, I wanted to give you some live code examples. Hopefully it's simple enough. We're going to go through some really simple stuff through to some way more advanced techniques. I just got off a job at RSEQ, which is relatively large, and we had some pretty crazy requirements around shooting off emails as soon as certain records were saved, and also transforming objects every single time they were saved back to the database. So I'll show you some pretty cool techniques we use to do that. Anyway, first of all, with Mongoose, you have to set up a model. So even though we're using a schemaless database, Mongoose does bring it back. Again, who's familiar with MongoDB? Got a few there in the front. Okay, so it's kind of going back the other way a little bit, but I like it. It's a little bit of meat in the middle, so we're not throwing out, like, you have at least a schema that we lock down, but it's a code size schema, and you can just add and remove bits, and it won't actually delete anything off the database. So I've got a basic little one here under users, and so basic first name, last name, all that sort of stuff. You specify the type for password. We can do that, but we've also got this cool little select false thing, so it won't return the password, the user's hash password by default when you're doing queries, so that's really handy. Some save photo things, I'll talk about that later. Photo data, that's another little trick. Emailing on saves, that other thing. And widgets, so we'll also get into that too. We can do relational database tricks. There is some overhead, but we'll show you how it's possible, at least, so you're not getting it all up. Anyway, look, let's get into the basics of Mongoose. So what I've basically done here is created a small little bit of JSON. Down the bottom then, I call this little bit of code here to register the model. Do need to give it a name somewhere. Don't see where I did that. Okay, anyway, we're all good. So doing it's really, really easy. So to grab the data down, we're shooting some data to it here. And all we need to do to create a new database record is create a new object equals new users. So that's the model that we created up above. And then what we can do is Mongoose has now got all promises as well, so we just call .save and then we'll return the promise. So that will create a new user and set it into the database and off we go. Update's very similar. So first of all, we need to find. It doesn't have us talking about we need to grab the objects first. So first thing you do is you go and grab the object out of the database. So first of all, we find it. You have to call .exec to get it down. Then you can do a .net so you can grab your promises. So what I've done here, I've used a lodash merge method. So just to grab all the other data, chuck it in. Obviously, from some security standpoint, you may want to do some more manual transforms. But the great thing is on the schema that you've got, Mongoose will filter all that out. It won't just save all of the stuff and throw out as well. So it's really handy. Finding a user, similar to just above. So what you do is just call find. The query is just standard MongoDB JSON that you use. You can select the fields, just doing .select. You can limit them, you can skip them, so you can do pagination. And again, .exec, and that'll strip back an array of objects that you can operate on. Removing guys is easy as well. So you've just got your .remove. Again, it's just a query, same sort of MongoDB thing. And that's your basic CRUD stuff. So it's not a lot of code, pretty straightforward and easy to use. The great thing is though, because you're dealing with objects instead of strings or things in an array, I can throw this to about 3 or 4 different functions, and then once I want to save the user, I just go, user.save once you pass it in. So it does make life a lot easier. Anyway, so on to some of the cool stuff. Okay, obviously we're creating users there. So relational database stuff. So what Mongoose allows you to do, if you look back over on the users model here, we've specified that this widgets is of type, it's an array of type object.ID. And that refers to these guys over here and reference widgets. That refers to this over here, so, name, price, period, that bottom. So what we can do with that is we can then say to the thing, here's a bunch of IDs, we just throw up and save just those IDs on a record, very similar to an old relational database. And for us to then pull those out, so we can add the 5 widgets to the user. That's just a boilerplate. For us though to pull these out and return the full records back from the user, all we can do is just call the .populate on any files. So what that's going to do is it's going to go and do it. There is a bit of overhead. It will do 2 queries. It shouldn't do 5. I haven't 100% confirmed it, but it should just do 2 because it should be able to grab this, then give me a list of the IDs. Then it goes back again to the database and then does another query with all those IDs and then just links it into the record and just dumps it in there. So you can see that happening over here. So this is the first record with all the widgets without the populate called on it. And then on the second one, this is what will happen now when you call populate. So it goes and grabs them all and links them in. Massive time saver, and I'm talking about performance. I haven't had any really serious problems except on something that was doing some, dealing a couple million records, and then that would take it too long. So we need to implement some caching there. But even so, on another database system, it probably has the same problem, let's say. So that's really cool. The other cool little trick, which you'll hit, this is for guys if you are jumping on and you actually start using this. You're going to want to pull down other people's records, but at the same time, you're probably also going to want to only select certain things of the populated records. You're probably going to do it down the rabbit hole, but it's really super easy to do. So we want to populate widgets. The little minus is the syntax for the second argument there is your select syntax, and so just minus name. So we just don't want to see the name, and you can see over here, name's been removed. So that's a good name. This one over here, got up. So that can be really cool, especially if you're not trying not to pull out sensitive data and you don't want to pull these things down and then try and iterate over and removing all the objects, that can get quite deep. So that's that on the relational database side. And finally, some of the really cool things with Mongoose is there's plugins. There's actually a pretty big network of plugins. I haven't used a lot of them myself. I ended up sort of writing them. One of the ones I do use though is a timestamp plugin, which I've gone and grabbed the actual source code for off a commercial one. There's your credit up the top. It's really very simple. So what you do is you pass in the schema that we created right back at the beginning. And what it does, it just adds 2 fields to the schema once it's loaded. And then pre-save, before it saves every time, go and grab the current date, chuck it in the updated, and if there's no create that, off we go. Pretty simple, but it just allows you to do the the timestamps without having to rewrite it. So that is, like I said, that's a commercial one. You do an npm install, another package to add to the mix. But yeah, so that's how we do those. But some of the more advanced stuff is all over here in the users. I'll quickly touch on it since you guys haven't really hit on this too much, so it'll probably go a bit over your head, but at least know it's here. So one of the things, for example, I've got in this is on save, it's got a full name field. So instead of having to pull down this or trying to concatenate records, it will create a new full name field. It goes and grabs the first name, goes and grabs the last name, and chucks it in so that you've got something here that's a bit searchable if that's probably, obviously that's a fairly small example, but there's indeed some big ones where we wanted to have a big searchable text jump. Email on save, same sort of thing. Again, before you save, you can just put any sort of logic you want in it. In this case, I've just got a console to log out, but other than that, you can do that. So that's the one that I used with probably almost 500 lines of code to determine, the requirement was there was heaps of stakeholders that, depending on this or depending on that or depending on this, send out this email to that person. And it was pretty complicated, but it had to happen every single time that a record changed. So that was the most reliable way to do it. It's been pretty bulletproof since we've done it. It's worth noting though that if you do end up using Mongoose, there is a .update. You can do it like a query, just like a find. You can do a find and update transaction. That won't hit any of your save hooks. Just remember that's the little golden nugget, because that might give you a day of tearing out your hair if you do end up using it. So I've also got another one here. So over in the other code, I've got some base64 strength photo data. This one here will grab that base64 data from the request and then transform it, copy it over into a file, and then replace it with a file name. So a little bit more complicated example. I've got a file into BrisJS. There we go. And also a password hashing function. So that's how you that way you send in a plain text password, and then it'll come out with a hash again. So yeah, look, that's basically Mongoose. But it's a very powerful library. It's really worth playing with. I've also, one other thing that's worth noting is that I've tried using the Mongo native driver I know. Yeah. Well, yeah, look, it worked largely, but it was doing a few million operations on something, and it would just keep killing the memory, and I couldn't find where the leak was anywhere, and chucked it on Mongoose and problem solved. So my bad, but yeah, I haven't had those sorts of issues every time I use it. So yeah, that's about it. Any questions? Yep.
What would you do in a situation where you don't know what a document object would look like coming in? Like you just mentioned, don't use the Mongo driver. How would
Mongoose? So Mongoose has got a mixed object type, and so what you can do, you can just jump on, put mixed in. There is some problems around it because it's got a lot of change tracking going on. So you can just edit, say this person.name equals this, then you can call save, and then it just goes and updates the record really efficiently from that, just that small change. So you lose a bit of that though when you put the mixed field in. It's not able to attach properly to each of the fields. However, so there's just a little flag. You say, "Hey, I've updated mixed" when you do it. And honestly, I've never actually had to do the flag. Usually those mixed things are, like you said, a whole lot of stuff comes in, you chuck it there. So, for example, I use like the mixed field when I have like credit card receipts coming back from a payment provider. I don't want to stuff around trying to map that out. And you just don't know. You don't want to lose it if it's going to change either any of the data. So I just say, "Yep, mixed," and you just chuck things at the array, and that's fine. Anything else? Yeah.
If there is no schema, how can I deal with that?
What do you mean no schema?
Like there is schema means there is a table.
So there is what you do, you define the schema up here. So it's sort of a virtual layer on top of the database. The database itself still doesn't have one. Though Mongoose does go and do a fair bit of validation when you fire it up and you attach it to the database. There has been times, I can't give you a perfect example, where it's popped up and said, "Hey, the schema's ruined," and it's not. It's usually around unique constraints, and it'll actually die if when you try to open up the app. So it does do some enforcement checking. But I think that's mostly going off to Mongo and saying, "Hey, this has got to be unique," and then Mongo is coming back saying, "Well, can't do it."
Let me try that again. Any final questions?
No worries, guys. Anyway, look, I know I went pretty quickly through it, but this is up on GitHub if you do end up finding yourself in a position where you want to use it. And it's got the tests there, so you can run the tests and at least know A, is it working, and B, how the hell did we do that? And go for it. So, no worries, guys.